Okay. So my name is T for the video. And then another thing that I'm a scientist by training. I'm a neuroscientist. I mentioned Society for Neuroscience meetings. And I've been doing education and career development kinds of work for the last 10 years after finishing the PhD and the postdocs. I did my PhD at UT Southwestern. I did my postdoc at the Gladstone Institutes near UCSF and spent a time doing a research experience. Hi, Joe. Doing a research experience in Boston for a little bit. I was an associate dean at WashU for a little bit. And the workshops that you have on your Canvas module, this Share Your Research, I used to run that course and the training for it for the Science Communication Lab for iBiology for a while. And I have a course on iBiology on business concepts. So I'm a big fan of iBio. So I'm really glad to be talking to you today using a lot of the basics from that course and adding on to it because I have experience in improv and in storytelling training for the last 10 years. So we'll have a lot of kind of elements of theater and spontaneity, but also strong science, right? So, okay, here we go. So let me share my screen. Okay. If you notice too, the slides that I use are going to demonstrate a lot of slide design ideas. So I like to use this opportunity. I like to have this picture of this bridge because you are going to do that in your talk. You're going to build your talk from the beginning, thinking about the end. And one of the great things about good talks is when they connect it, right? Does anybody here like stand-up comedy? Yeah. So the thing that's really great about stand-up is what they call a callback whenever they bring up some story and then a couple stories later they refer to it. So that's something that you actually can do in your talk also. And we'll talk about ways to do that. But it's really satisfying for an audience member whenever they get to hear something connected from beginning to end. It feels complete. And then I like the reflection of this picture because it's not only what you're traveling and the story that you're telling about your research, but it's how it's reflected on other people to complete the picture. So that is the reason why I chose this image and also what we'll be going over today. Okay, so as we start, to kind of pull from your creative part, not just your learning part, you're here today to learn and participate, but pick one of these questions. You don't have to do all of them. Pick one of these questions and just think for a moment. What is something that just has excited you about your research? And it can be from any point in time that you've done research. It can be an observation that you've made recently that you thought was pretty cool. Or you could just say, like, why should somebody be compelled to listen to me talk about my research? Why should somebody care? And so just take a moment and think about this. And what I'm going to ask you to do is put into the chat your answer, but not right now. We're going to do something called a waterfall where this gives everybody a chance to kind of think and respond in their own way. And then you're going to put it in the chat, but don't push send. And then whenever I say go, everyone's responses can come in at the same time. Okay, so take a minute, pick any one of these, and then write a little bullet point or your answer to it. And just give me a little reaction when you're done, right? Like a little thumbs up or a heart emoji or the, whatever, doesn't matter. And we're going to pull from this as we go through the talk today. This is also really helpful as you're thinking because it pulls from this idea called a light bulb moment, where you have like a memory that flashes in your mind, and it's usually associated with some sort of emotion, like an excitement, Of course, it can be negative too, but here we're going to hone in on positive aspects of your research. So you can even dig a little bit like deeper if you want. Like whenever I think flashbulb moment and I think science, one of my first memories is whenever I was in the 4th grade and I was asking my mom. We grew up in a little town in Texas, and it was raining, and I'd been watching some Bill Nye in the class, and I was like, is this rain acid rain? And then, she was like, well, you could try to figure that out. And then I was reading, we had to check out books on this, right? So there was no internet yet. Oh my gosh, I'm very young. And then we checked out books, and I was like, oh, you get pH, you can make litmus paper if you have red cabbage and like blot paper. So I asked my mom if she would like buy me some red cabbage, and I made my own litmus paper. And I was like, how do you know if it works? And so like I blotted milk, which is supposed to be, actually, is milk basic or acidic? Basic, right? Oh my gosh. Anyway, whatever it's supposed to be, it turned the other color, which I was like, oh, my blot paper doesn't work. So my first experience with positive and negative controls. Right? Okay. Do y'all have something you're ready to share? What about our audience members that are black boxed? Yes? Ready? Okay, go ahead and take a couple seconds to write it into the chat. And on 3, you're gonna all push enter, and we're gonna see what our zeitgeist is here today. Ready? 1, 2, 3, go. Yeah. Okay, only like 6 people did that. Come on, y'all. Okay, that's okay. You'll get another opportunity. I know some of you might be at the bench working, so all love here. All love, no shame. Okay, so we can read through some of these, and for the recording, I'll be anonymous to respect people. So there's some people who are responding why so much you care about their research, and there's different types of like zombie cells in the brain, or seeing a dynamic reporter for the first time was an exciting observation. An exciting memory is whenever their code finally worked and produced a figure for a paper. Yay! Someone studies exposure relevant to everyone on a daily basis. Okay, why should somebody care? Because it's relevant to you daily. That's a good hook. Somebody says that autism with concurring social anxiety is different from non-autistic individuals with social anxiety. Ooh, that is very interesting. Somebody else shared an exciting memory when they found a little rust-like particle in the lung fluid of COVID patients. It made sense months later, and it helps people not to get sick. Whoa, that's cool. An interesting observation, how interdisciplinary their research has been, how it tries to bridge different modalities to understand mechanisms. An exciting memory, the first time they saw a zebrafish embryo under a microscope. Well, how small is that? Great. So you're getting the idea of trying to pull from something that is exciting, emotional, personal, even, and then being able to share it. You all actually are pretty good with the succinct communication. So kudos to those of y'all. Okay, so as we think about getting started in your talk, let's talk about the beginning of the bridge. The thing that you're going to build is what your very typical like intro is going to include, right? It's what do you know about your science? What don't you know? Because you're filling in that gap. And why does it benefit society or the audience that's listening to you? And so the thing about this is this is really great because it works for a grant application too. This is the way I was taught. Talk about what you know, what you don't know, the gap you're filling, and why it benefits society. Why do you need to get funded for this? A little thing that's different specifically for research talks is you also want to hear about how you're connected to their research, right? Like somebody put in the chat, this affects you every day. I'm like, okay, I'm listening now. So it's how are you connected to the audience? And you're there to gain insights, right? This is the difference between reading a recipe and watching that little like 60-second tasty video or the, cooking show. You want to learn exactly how things are done. And that's why people come to talks. They can look at your Western blot or your heat maps later, but they want to hear about the experience of getting it. Where did you have to troubleshoot? What worked? How did you decide to do that next experiment versus this other experiment you could have done? Why did you pick that method instead of this method? That's why they're there, for those like little bits of insight, because in the end, you go to expand your own horizons and also sometimes take back those techniques and knowledge for yourself, right? You want to learn from others as well. And so if you're considering that as you're giving a talk, it kind of changes the way that you present your information, your transitions, and how you talk about it. So, for sure, you need the basics, you need the building blocks. What do you know, what you don't know, how it benefits society. But also think about how you're sharing these other things with the audience. And you don't have to do it in every slide because it probably gets a little bit tedious, where you're like, and this is how this connects to you, right? You don't want to do that. That's like salesy, but we'll talk about places that it might work really well. Okay, so I talked about this idea of a light bulb memory. And one of the key aspects of any sort of audience persuasion, specifically for you who's pitching out there, is these three moments. And they're drawn from Aristotle's principles of persuasion. And it's logos, pathos, and oh my gosh, credibility is logos, pathos, and ethos. Sorry, thank you. Ethos is credibility, pathos is emotion, and logos is logic. And so you have to be credible. That's kind of what you establish from the beginning. This is really important as you go on a job talk too. So those of you who are preparing for job talks, that credibility is that place where you're like, this is who I trained with, this is how I trained, this is the work that I've done, this is why I can bring that to your institution, to your department, and this is why you would want to, right? That credibility bit. The emotion is the part that we're not trained to do as scientists often, or to give in the research talks. But I'm going to try to persuade you today that it's going to be important for your research talk. And it doesn't have to be a touchy-feely thing, right? It's just something that people can relate to. That can be a basic first connection for the emotion. And then the logic is the part that you all excel on. Like, this is the evidence, this is the orthogonal evidence, this is the reason why it's rigorous. That part, people usually get to their data slides and they're just rolling after that. So we're going to focus on the intro because that's a lot of times where people either give too much information or not enough. And so we're going to focus on that today. And then tomorrow, even though you're rock stars at presenting your data, we're going to talk about how to design your slides so people actually take in your data. So I am a neuroscientist by training, so I think a lot about like how we actually take in, retain. I did an undergrad degree in like cognitive science. I did have on a psych major. So we're going to integrate parts of that. Okay, so one of the basic things about storytelling is you need to have an arc. And this is something like my fourth grade daughter learned 2 years ago. And the thing is, it's important here because we often forget to do that as scientists, that you share your research and you share your data, but there's no like either conclusion or like conflict in there. And the conflict, you don't have to share, all your problems with your science or how you got it. But what I mean by conflict is, what is the tension? Why was this data important to get? Why is it important that you're doing this study right now? Where does it fit? And that's what I mean by the context and the conflict. You have to give people an idea of why this is important. And so that's a part of the arc of your story. And then usually people run out of time or neglect to do the last part, which is the vision. Like, close it up, tell them what you're doing next, why it's important, draw them along with you. Again, this is going to be really important for persuading people to give you money for pitching and then to give you a job, right? That vision for the future and closing it while connecting it to the whole story is going to be people like, yes, I want to be on your journey. This is great. I can see where you're going and I want you to be a part of it here, right? So that's kind of how we're going to talk about this. What does this look like for a scientist? So we're going to break it down in two different ways. We're going to start with Nemo. Okay, so humor me. This is what we call a story spine. It's a very basic way to get through a story, picking out the most important parts. And so this example of this movie, who here has seen Nemo? Just by a show of hands. Anybody, or in the chat? Okay, Okay. Well, great. Okay. So don't you worry, because you're about to get the synopsis on Nemo. Here we go. So finding Nemo, once upon a time, there was a fish named Marlin that was protective of his son Nemo. And every day he warned Nemo that the ocean was full of danger. Until one day, to rebel against his dad, Nemo ignored the warnings and swam into the sea. Because of this, he was captured by a diver and ended up in a dentist's fish tank. Remember the little girl with the braces? Anyway, because of this, Marlin enlisted other sea creatures to go and rescue his son Nemo, until finally he found Nemo and learned that love depends on trust. All right. So I'm curious if I could have 3 volunteers to participate in an activity. We're going to do a story spine. I'm going to wait for 3 hands to go up. Okay, Helena. Excellent. Hello. Oh, Sidhu. Okay. Excellent. Una más. We need one more. Robert. Okay, yay. Everybody, round of applause for our volunteers. Okay, so what Helena, Sidhu, and Robert are going to demonstrate is going through a story spine. And so you can start it about your research journey or a protein or anything. It's totally make-believe. The only thing that's required is that it has to be connected. The story has to be connected with the person's sentence before you. So we'll go in order of raising hands, and you'll get to go, I think, twice. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then Helena and Sidhu will get to go twice. So it would be Helena, Sidhu, and then Robert. Okay? Helena, start us off.
I need to have all of them, right?
Just the first sentence. And then Sidhu will say
only
every day, and then Robert will say until one day. So you'll kind of, okay.
Okay. So once upon a time, there was a mother of 3 kids that lived in Europe.
Okay. Sidhu?
Every day after school, she would take them out for hot chocolate and pastries.
Every day, wow. Until one day, Robert?
Until one day, one of them had a stomach ache and couldn't get ice cream.
Because of that, she realized that having pastry and ice cream every day might not be very good.
And ever since then, they've only been going out once a week.
Sidhu, because of that, we're on this one. Because of
Oh,
that,
sorry.
you're good?
Okay. Because of that, they had to incorporate eating fruit into their daily after-school ritual.
Because of that, the kids started to really like vegetables.
I thought about the kids started hating her. Okay.
Helena, until finally?
One of the kids started hating her.
Oh, until one of the kids started hating vegetables. And ever since then, Sidhu?
And ever since then, the mother had to find creative ways of sneaking vegetables into the kids' diet.
Round of applause, round of applause. All right, so you have a situation that they got through together, right? We have a solution that was great but didn't work for everybody, but the mom, as moms do, found a way forward. Excellent, that was really good. So this is an example of what you can do for your own research story. And I think the thing that we skip most often, thanks for our volunteers, the thing we skip most often is the because of that. Why did we do the study? What came of it? And this can be a really great thing that you can do. You can even build into one slide, right? Like these are the data that I got from this one protein that I worked on. Because I did this study, we learned this. Because of that, we decided to do this. And you don't have to follow, you don't have to do like, what is that, 8 lines? But remembering to add the because of that is that insight that people are looking for and to help you connect with what your audience might be interested in. So here's another story spine. This one's a little shorter. This one's only 3 points, which is your what, are you doing? So what? Why do people care? And then now what? Now what are people going to do with this information? And so this is very simple, right? You're sharing an observation or spark your imagination of your audience based on something shared. Like you're all scientists in the room, or you're all, immunologists in the room, or everyone here is interested in microscopy, or everyone here is interested in air pollution, right? What is your shared identity with the audience? And then what is your goal? Is your goal to provide information? Is your goal to find a collaborator? Is your goal to get funding? What is your goal? So you have to define that ahead of time. What are you sharing with the audience? What do they care about? And what is your goal out of this? And what's theirs? And then finally, what is the hook? We're going to do our next section on hooks, but don't worry about that. And then your next is your so what? Why do people care? You're used to writing this part. So remember to add that in there. What's your motivation? Why is it relevant? And then finally, now what? How can you share this knowledge with the community, or how people can take the information? What can they do with it? And remember to connect it back to the hook. So what I'm going to invite y'all to do for, let me see here, a few minutes is I've created this slide deck here. Where's the chat? Here it is. So everyone can access this. And what you're going to do is I've given the template on slide 2. On slide 3, what I want you to do is just right click it. Yes.
Sorry, we're only half the links copied.
Only
in the
half
chat.
the link is copied. Okay, thank you. Here. There we go. That's an actual link. Okay, thank you for that, Anna. Okay, so what you're going to do on the right, on the third one, is right click it and duplicate the slide. After you duplicate the slide, you can go into background and you can change it. You're like, I'm feeling a little sunshiny today. I'm going to do this color, or whatever you want. You can change it. And if you choose to, you can put in your topic here or your name, right? So fill it in, make it your own. Ooh, I like someone did bright green. Okay, what we're going to do is you're going to spend about, I'm going to say 5 minutes filling this in for yourself and just thinking about it. All right. So at this point, I wanted to ask if there's 2 volunteers who wanted to try out their pitch on a live audience, get some user feedback, if you will, do some market research. Anybody? 2 volunteers to try out their outlines on the group? We'll try it. My kids love this trick. 2? Anybody? 2? Okay. Helena and Sidhu, thank you. We'll invite your participation. We really appreciate it. Helena, you want to go first? I see you're unmuted.
Yeah, so what do I need to do?
Share my screen and let me know what your slide is.
It's probably the first one.
First one?
Maybe? No, this
Yes.
one.
Okay, great.
Yeah. It took me a time to like write it down. I still think.
Okay, wait, before you start, what is your intent for us as the people listening to your outline?
Well, I don't know how to say it. Like, I want to make people more aware of day-to-day exposures.
Okay.
In order for them to be more, not careful, but like, I'm trying to explain myself.
Yeah. Careful about?
Not careful, but be aware in order to prevent.
Okay. Okay.
So
And so like, and change behavior. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's not only for like the simple people, but like federal governments and like law enforcement.
Okay. So like take action?
Yeah, maybe more. Yeah.
Okay. Take action, like be careful, or, change, something like that. Okay, so you can update that. Okay, so audience, this is what we're listening for. Are we more aware, and do we feel fired up afterwards? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, so if I'm talking about my research is mostly on everyday today exposures that we are all exposed to. Stuff like high temperatures, fine particulate matter, components of fine particulate matter, and it's things that we are exposed in a way that we cannot actually try to avoid, because this is our day-to-day life. And the so what is that because we cannot actually prevent ourselves from being exposed to this, it will lead to numerous health outcomes. And these health outcomes can come even years later. It's not always on a short term, but it also on a long term. You won't see it before. And the now what is to make this research more popular and more diverse in order for us to be able to, let's say, create awareness and try to handle it in like a public enforcement, or like a less pollution, or not being exposed to temperature when it's very hot.
Okay, and heat exposure. Okay, great. Good job. Okay, so on a scale from 1 to 10, everybody, or like a good Likert scale, where 10 is like really aware now and ready to take action, and 1 is like, I'm sorry I wasn't listening. Hopefully nobody was that. Go into the chat and say where you are in your level of awareness and action now that you've heard the outline.
I'll take that. It's more than the average.
Great. Yeah. Dang. Okay, now my question to the audience is, what about this, if you had to pick 1 or 2 keywords, what caught your attention? What was like, oh. Exposure on a daily basis. All. Yeah. The health outcomes. Without knowing it. Oh, the long term and short term. Great. Yeah. Okay, so there you go. You have some data. Anna. Yeah.
Yeah.
May I make 2 suggestions? Yeah, I think one thing that you said that didn't appear but that caught my attention was here. I think air pollution exposures that you can't avoid. You said that. I thought I was like, oh, tell me more about that. I hope I hear that in the talk, right? And then the other one is here. You also talked about making the research more prominent, or making the research, I have a light bulb going out here, or making the research more applicable to public enforcement. So maybe tying in a sentence about policy, research and policy here, I think would also be helpful. That way, if there's anybody involved in policy in the audience, they can perk up. But at this point, that's not that clear. So
Okay.
yeah, but overall, great job.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, Sidhu.
Hey,
And thanks, everybody.
I'm on slide 9.
Slide 9. Okay. Oh, what a very beautiful bright sherbet color. It's like I feel like eating strawberry sherbet now. Okay, excellent. Go for it. Oh, wait. Our intention is to be informed, inspired, and more accepting of vaccines. Ooh, very important topic. Okay, go for it.
Okay, so my main idea is, or this is what I work on, is we are trying to make better vaccines that people will be more willing to take. So the problem is that currently a lot of vaccines that exist in the world need booster doses, although some don't. And a big determinant of why some vaccines need booster doses is because you have different immune responses to each of these vaccines, and that determines how long you're protected. So what? If we make, like when you make lots of vaccines, it's difficult and it's very cost inefficient. And also it's very difficult to get people to take vaccines, especially when they have to go take it all the time. And we need to solve this problem because our shared goal is to reduce vaccine preventable diseases. So how do we do that? My lab studies what happens in with your immune response immediately after vaccination. And the way we are studying this is by comparing really good versus really bad vaccines for the same disease. And this will help us identify what is it that happens in the immune response following a good vaccine that gives you long-term protection, and what happens in bad vaccines that you really don't want in a vaccine. This in the future will help us choose better vaccine candidates early during development. And then also it'll help focus mass vaccination efforts.
Okay. All right. Everybody for Sindhu, same thing. Scale of 1 to 10, where 10 is like super informed, inspired, and ready to go get vaccinated right now. That's a 10. Versus a 1 was like, I'm sorry, I was watching TV. Where are we at? Go ahead, put it in the chat. Ooh.
This is a very vaccine accepting crowd though.
Yeah, this is definitely the sampling is skewed, but right. So, well, let's do it this way. If you were an audience member who is resistant to vaccines, what would you need in this outline that Sindhu doesn't already present to us? Let's do it that way. Go ahead and put in the chat. What would you be like, this is still missing for me? How much it's going to cost? Side effects. Side effects is a big one. People saying that. What kind of resistance? Yeah. And it seemed to me that you were advocating for vaccines without boosters. So does this mean a one-time shot?
I think that would be the ideal goal is
Yeah.
is that, you know, you have 1,000 vaccine candidates for every, for example, a new infection. And if you can weed out the vaccines that are going to give you really bad side effects, or they're not going to give you long-term immunity, long-term protection, then you don't proceed with them. You don't get them out and give it to people. You keep looking until you find a vaccine that gives you all of these things that you want and removes all of the things you don't want, like side effects.
The side effects.
Or,
so maybe your what is a hook that says creating a 1-dose vaccine that's effective, but it's effective, cost effective, and has little side effects. Maybe that's your what. Yeah. Great. And who's the research done? Yes. Is it done ethically? Great. Okay. All right. So that's an example. If y'all are interested in getting feedback on yours, I'll stay on a little bit longer and we can do personal feedback if you want. So thank you everybody for participating. The next thing I wanted to get to was the hooks. So now that you have your intro, we talked a little bit about this with Cindy, like what does a hook look like? And so an effective hook is going to have either some shared experience, right? Like this is gonna, like everybody gets sick or everybody's exposed to pollutants, something that's unexpected or surprising, something that really draws your curiosity, something that is like maybe a personal story. You've heard this, like people who study certain diseases because their family member was affected by it. Or maybe you start with something completely objective and sensory. Like you can imagine standing on a dark night trying to look for those, those meteors in the sky. Like everyone can be drawn to that experience. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to show you some examples of some hooks. And then what we're going to have you do is brainstorm different hooks for your intros. And the thing is, we're going to get in creativity mode. So I'm going to want you to try out 3 different hooks for your intro and then just see kind of which one might land. Okay, so here's one example. Tell me which hook this is, right? So we've got something personal, something unexpected, something curious, storytelling, or sensory. I'll pull this back up. Actually, let me do this. I'll put it into the chat so you have your options right here. Okay, So this is,
I
wait,
can tell even before, only by the picture.
oh, let me see here. Can you see the big picture?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Let me see if I can make sure that you can hear it. Share sound. Okay, I'm gonna do the first 60 seconds because that's about how long the hook should take for the intro. Here we go.
Have you ever been bitten by a mosquito? Well, yes, I have been too. Almost everyone around the world has had this experience at least once in their lives. But tell me, have you ever wondered why it's itchy right afterwards? And the answer might surprise you. It's actually saliva. It turns out that just like you and me, insects like mosquitoes have saliva that they use when they eat. They inject it into our skin, where it numbs the bite so we don't feel the pain, and it makes the blood flow freely so they can take the biggest meal that they can before flying away. Unless this happens. But the itch that you feel is actually our immune system responding to the different molecules in the saliva. And there are many molecules in the saliva.
Okay. What do you think she employed for this? Which tactics?
All of which can be classified as protein.
Throw it in the chat, or you can unmute. What tactics were used? Personal experience, curiosity, novelty. Yeah. Okay. This is a very effective visual too. Everyone hates mosquitoes and the itching. Yes. Why does it happen? Right. Okay. Great. Shared sensory. I thought the sensory one was pretty good too. Great. Sensory. Yeah. Shared experience. Okay. Ready for the next one? Okay. Here we go. Let me make this big again. Captions are on.
Reading. Have you thought about it lately? Have you thought about the intricacies of the process? How the pages feel on your fingers as you're turning them one by one? The different letters that you see, and how they sound, and how those different letters form together to create words, and then much larger sentences where you're able to extract the meaning from the text. Have you thought about it lately? When I was a kid, I used to spend my summers at the public library in my neighborhood. I would walk through the different aisles where I would smell the aged pages and ink. I would be so excited to be in the section that contained Goosebumps and all of the horror or science fiction books that I could engage with. I could be a member of the law.
Okay. What does Paige use? Yeah. Sensory, narrative, personal experience. Yeah. Who loves the smell of a library book? Great. So in this case, Paige uses a positive sensory, right? In the last one, Karina used a negative sensory, right? But maybe that's something you can consider as you're going through yours. Like, what is a sensory experience? And something that Paige does is, oh yeah, she used narrative. That's true, Hannah. So one thing you can consider is starting with a question, right? She started with a question. What would be a provoking question for yours, right? That would be something either that's a longstanding question in the field or something that people might wonder about, right? Do you think about how many pollutants you're breathing in every day? No, are you going to tell me, right? So, okay, ready for the next one? Let's see here. Okay, this was a 3-minute thesis winner in his school. Let me see if I can go big screen. Captions.
Ever spilt your coffee? Maybe it's because you were running. Have you ever spilled
Captions on? Okay, here we go.
your coffee? Maybe it's because you were running late to work, and as you ran, waves built up in the cup until it just spilt out the side. Or maybe it's because you stopped too suddenly, And as you stopped, the coffee just kept on going. It doesn't really matter what the reason is. Somebody's covered in coffee and you've lost all your valuable caffeine. Now, you could just slow down, but who has time for that? So what I'm interested in is what's the fastest way to get a cup of coffee from point A to point B without spilling a drop? That's what my work looks at. Except I don't really have a cup of coffee. Rather, my cup is a set of magnets, and my coffee is some of the coldest atoms in the universe. But it all works the same. If I shake it up or I stop too suddenly, I lose my coffee. And because I make it here and I need to use it over here, if I spill it in between, I can't do any science.
Okay. What about Bryce? Shared sense of curiosity. Yeah. He has a very effective use of an analogy. Curiosity and surprising. Yeah. Yeah. Physics and coffee. Smart guy putting those two together. Okay. All right. So what we're going to do now, shared personal experience, coffee, curiosity, and amazingality. Yeah, surprising. I'm going to watch the whole video later. Okay, yeah, I'm going to share all the links with y'all for these. So here's Bryce's, here's Paige's, and here is Karina's. Okay, what we're going to do is take these, oops, I'm going to take the whole slide, and we won't share out for like time's sake, but I do want to give you all a chance to, let me just insert a new slide here. I'll go ahead and put all the, here, go ahead and go back to the slide deck, right click and make another copy for yourself. Duplicate, can I duplicate this? There we go. Duplicate the slide, make it your own, and pick 2 or 3 of these and write out a hook for your intro. Maybe consider, I didn't put it in there, but like also like starting with a question or picking an analogy, right? Those are 2 ones that you can add, but we'll take about 5 minutes to try out some hooks. Okay. And then go ahead, if you can, connect your hook slide to right beneath your outline slide, because we're going to do a shared activity at the end. So, okay. How are we doing? Get them. A few hooks in. It looks like a few of y'all have hooks in. What I will encourage you all to do is in this next week, even those of you who are watching the video, hopefully you paused and took time to write down a couple of hooks. Try them out on your, people in the lab or like people on the subway. I don't know how often they do that, but one time I was reading about, or I met with a postdoc because I do some career coaching too, a postdoc who was reading like an article on the journal article instead of just on their phone, and somebody was on the BART. This is in San Francisco. It looked over their shoulder and was like, "Oh, I'm interested in that protein too." And they started talking, and then invited them to go to Genentech lab. I'm like, you just never know who you're meeting on the subway. But in this next week, I encourage you all to try out the hooks and find which one worked for a different audience member. And what I'll say is that if you all give it a try and next week give me your data, I'll put you in a raffle for a free career coaching session with me, or like a talk coaching session with me. Okay, so give it a try, come back next week, and well, hopefully it's an incentive enough to try out your stuff, but if not, we can do some coaching together. Okay, for those of you who are watching the video too, that's open for you as well. Okay, so the next thing that I kind of wanted to go over and leave some room for some Q&A is, let's see here. Yes. Okay, what is your invitation for your audience? So we asked a little bit about it's whether you're getting them to learn more about your research, to advocate for policy, to advocate for better health outcomes for themselves or their loved ones, or invest in your work, in your research, or invest in you as like a job candidate. So remember that you have that motivation at the end of it, and you want to kind of go back to that as you are going through your slides. It's not just at the beginning, at the end, whenever you cross the bridge at the end, you're like, so what do you think? Think about key slides, maybe even key data slides, where you're like, this was the thing that was most exciting for us. Remember, you can add in those words, add in that little bit of the pathos, the feeling of like, this was really exciting. And as we're thinking about the next step, we're really looking to work with policy members or with like funders or with whatever. You can put those invitations in as you go along. So remember that intention as you're going throughout your talk, and why people care. So I have a cousin who's in a startup, and I was like, oh, tell me how your startup's going. And he goes, let's see here, you're a mom, I'm gonna give you the mom pitch. And I was like, well, that's great, but can I also get like, I don't know, the fundraising pitch? I'm just really curious what it is. But the point in sharing that story is that oftentimes you're thinking about your audience, and what is your audience going to be if it's a department versus an institute, and you have the opportunity to talk to a wider variety of people from different disciplines. So remember your audience whenever you're sharing that invitation as well. All right, so the next is, here we go. How can you use a computational brainstorming partner? ChatGPT. A lot of people are using ChatGPT. I as well. You want to make sure that what you're doing is rigorous in terms of, kind of training it, but you want to make sure it's ethical in terms of thinking about, one, your own intellectual property. Do you want to feed that into the machine? So think about privacy settings and that kind of thing. And then if you need to withhold some things, like put the word protein in there or something like that. But it can be a very useful partner in terms of brainstorming analogies for audiences. I like to, when I go, walking is really great for creativity. And so I go on a walk and I'll think of analogies that I can use. And then I'll throw it into a Gen AI engine and see what they come up with, right? And so you know all the benefits of the Gen AI, and then also the pitfalls, and just be mindful about that. I do want to show one example of what you can do. And so if you're not sure who your audience is going to be or what they might care about, then, or just be more comprehensive about the way you're presenting it, here's one question that I presented, like, why would the general public care about this? And it was about dementia. And so, and you see here, I just put in like photeen instead of protein. And then, so you're like, okay, yeah, I could talk about the impact of dementia, my personal connection to it, quality of life. This is a big one. Scientific progress. Like Sindhu, like as a neuroscientist, I was like, one good reason to get people to take vaccines is that people have shown people who are vaccinated have lower risk of like dementia later on. I'm like, I'm up for that, right? So thinking about different ways that you can connect to quality of life. And so you can use it in that sort of way too, as you think about how to advocate for your science and connect with people. So remember, the thing about why people come to talks is to connect with them and to gain insights. And so what we'll do next week is now talking about how to present data. And so I have some fun activities there based on research and studies and what your brain is able to take in. We're going to do examples like we did today. I'm going to throw up a slide. We're going to say what works, what doesn't work. And if you'd like to bring a slide, same as today, we'll have an opportunity to workshop that. So that's what I'll encourage you to do. And then, so in the last 10 minutes or so, I was going to open that up to Q&A. What questions did I not answer? What do you want more clarification on? You want to run something by this group? I'll go ahead and do that. And I'll go ahead and stop the recording since it's getting a little bit more personalized. All right, tune in for those who join, come next week, and thanks for joining.